Hello, welcome back to Prevengineering. Today we're talking about something I do regularly now that I make videos like this, and that is removing fillers, words like and just long silence bits from a video, just kind of programmatically. So I've created this app that goes through the different filler words and the gaps it hears in a video, and it will remove those things and make it sound like you see on a lot of those more popular common vlogs type interview sort of YouTube videos like these ones I'm making myself. And I'm going to show you guys kind of the Python behind how this works. I think this is a really useful tool for creators and content creators who want to make videos and do it regularly, don't want to have to pay for the editing or spend a lot of the time editing constantly. And I know I made this whole thing because I was motivated to make an automated process for myself because I found myself spending a lot of time just trimming my videos and cutting them. It works pretty well. I definitely think it has room for improvement, but I want to show you guys kind of just my thought process, how I designed it, and ways that it can be utilized for your needs. So I used the Whisper library. If you're familiar with OpenAI's Whisper, it does a lot of detecting of silences and ums and filler words. And I also used MoviePy and PyDub to kind of clip and trim my videos, and I'll show you guys how you can access these API calls and how you can use this in your Python script. So to start, I already have a version of this uploaded to GitHub, and you can look through this. I have a README that tells you how to implement it. I have an example of the GUI that I've created for it. It's a really useful tool. It works best with Windows 10 and up, so if you have that, I can pretty much guarantee it'll work. I haven't tried it on a Linux or a Mac system yet, but I take you through the process of installing the libraries, how to set up a virtual environment if you're not familiar, and how you can make this tool useful for yourself. There is a library called Fmpeg that you might need to make sure you can use the MoviePy clipping tools. I edit these videos with MP4s mostly, and Fmpeg can kind of clip and trim and works best with those. And you might need to install that in your system, and I have instructions for how to do that if you just follow what's here in my README, and it will take you through how you can get that working for your system and in your path. And if you just follow through my GitHub, it'll tell you basically what I'll tell you today, but I want to show you guys because I think it's exciting and I'm happy to talk about it. And if you're not super familiar with Python and you just want to use the tool itself, I've also created a release exe that you can run within a folder that will do the same thing. The Python version would be nice if you wanted to tune things, change things, make it more customizable, add more filler words than just because that's the only word that I've added. But you'll be able to still run the software and make the changes you want with the exe version. So let's jump in. Here is the code. I use VS Code. I've written this. I wrote this. It's a long script, maybe not the best way of doing it, but it's a series of classes that accomplish what we're trying to do. So it takes in a video, and it has a GUI, and it will chop it up, and then it'll spit back out a video that has been clipped and trimmed. The libraries that we're using mainly, as I mentioned again, is MoviePy, Whisper, PyDub, a few other ones that are just kind of helper things. I'm using the Tkinter library to create my GUI, and I'm using WinSound to create a sound, and web browser sys os some things to kind of just add some nice helpful tools for navigating to the internet and your file structures. Okay, so we'll kind of just go down and I'll jump to different parts of the code as I find that they're relevant. So the first thing is this first class text director. You see any command output that you'd see in the command window from these libraries and API calls will be pushed to a widget that is on the GUI. We start with this video filter class GUI. It uses a Tkinter library to create a GUI that I've named. We correct the path to any of our external files that the GUI might reference, like buttons, theme colors, and we create a bunch of these buttons. We have an option for the user to turn a sound off or sound on. For when the video finishes converting, you can change that setting on the GUI if you'd like. I have a bar for the video entries, so you can browse through your file structure. It's like the video you want, and the output folder as well. And then you can also name it whatever you want in another label bar. There is a progress bar that will show you kind of the status of your video converting. It just shows you the big steps. It doesn't show you the progress of the video being clipped. That is shown in the command window, and we'll get to that later. And then we also have a few other status things that we can do. There is 3 sliders that allow you to tune the quality and output of your video. So you can change what the width of the time will be the minimum length that a silent interval must take place in order to determine that that's a section of video to trim. There is the padding, which is kind of like a delay when it first detects the silence, so that it will know, oh, I shouldn't cut it right off at the beginning of that silence, because sometimes that can be a little odd. Like the person might be saying a word still and just kind of closing it out, and then it will jump to the next word. So this padding kind of cuts off a little bit of that, adds a little bit of time to delay it after here's the last word, and then also adds a little bit of buffer time after the silence is about to end, so that they don't just immediately jump to saying the next word. You can tune that. And then the other thing is the quiet threshold, which is determined kind of by the ambient sound in your room. If it's really quiet, then it might need to be tuned down a little bit so that it can pick up, or so it doesn't pick up any like small noises. Or if you're in a really loud room, you might have to tune it up so that you'll recognize to tune down, to cut out more sound than you want. And you'll have to play with it per your video. I found that the settings that are default here, -21 decibels and 0.2 seconds for padding time and a 650 millisecond minimum silence time, really helped me with my videos. And here's an example of it being cut. If I just go silence for a second, and now I'm talking again, and you'll be the judge of whether you liked how that gap sounded. We can get into some of these other functions. So when you update the sliders, you can look at these ways, these methods for how they update, and they'll change the value, and then they'll be updated in the program. And we talked about browsing before. There's a preview frame in the bottom right. So when it successfully determines that it's clipping a video, it will show you a preview of each video that it's clipping, or each screenshot, I guess you could say, of that moment in time that it's clipping the video, which I think is kind of nice to show you that, hey, it is actually doing something. And start processing is where the video script really starts beginning. So in start processing function, that's when you hit the start button. It checks to make sure you actually have a video file, everything's good, and then it starts this thread that'll show you some output in the command window that's opened with the program. We'll detect silences, so that's the first step, is we'll go through, it'll take your video, it'll parse out the audio. There might be a file called temp audio wave or something like that in your folder. That's okay. You can delete that after we've finished converting and clipping our video. It's just there to help it detect the silences. It looks at your waveform and it detects based on the threshold we said before. And it does that using PyDub. The next step is it'll attempt to load in the whisper model. So that is OpenAI's whisper model that's used to detect words or other variations of sounds particularly. And we can call it, we use just the base model here. There's other models you can use. You can look up the documentation on Whisper. I'll leave a link in the description. And then after that, we'll go through and we'll find those words with the model. I'm saying right here. And then it will look for all those time periods where it says It'll find the beginning and end. It also finds the silences. And we'll add the padding time here. You can see that in the padding time. Then we'll cut. And then it'll go into a reconstruction. So it can concatenate the video clips using MoviePy and put things back together. And then that can take a significant amount of time. And then after all of that, it'll play a beeping sound and your video should be output successfully. So let's give it a try. I'll run my program here. It'll take some time to open up. So there might be a jump here. And there we go. It loaded. Now there's a lot going on in the back end. It's a clunkier Python program. So if you want to improve that, go ahead and let me know. If you have a version, you can fork the branch and tell me, hey, this works better. I'd love to learn how to do that better. But yeah, so it does eventually open here. And just as I said, you have your options. You can select things. So we can browse to a file. I have just a file here, an unclipped video. It's just music I found, kind of background thing. And I paused the video several times so that theoretically when you're listening to the song, there should be some gaps where it's just no noise. And we'll just put that here in this folder. I don't know, we can call it Jenkins. And we have the sound on, we have these settings. We can set the quietness threshold, the padding time, minimum silence length. We'll leave it as is. I'll hit start. Here it's going to load in the video. Then it'll extract the audio. This is like a 17 to 20-ish second long video. We'll detect the silences, and then we'll detect the filler words, and then it will cut the intervals, and then you can see that there's the preview in the bottom right. And it can take a little bit of time to cut the intervals. MoviePy is not the fastest tool in the toolbox. But yeah, then it will write it, You'll see it go through every frame, and then yeah, you give it a second, and there we go. The process is completed. Here's a quick tip: don't press the start button more than once, otherwise you'll start converting the video 2 times at the same time, and it'll take longer. But it works, and I can show you guys the example output. So we'll close this. I have preloaded versions already up here to show you guys. So this is what it's like when it's unclipped. Here's the version where I clipped it in my program. You can see that the audio came back together, and you couldn't really hear that there was a gap. So yeah, there you have it. I think it's a really useful program. Go ahead to check it out, like and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are, if you want to change things, if you have suggestions on things I could have done differently. And thanks for joining us today on Prevengineering.